Hello everybody, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. I'm very excited to say that I finally have something for the Stadium Blitzer family of vehicles. This includes the Blitzer Beetle as well as the Stadium Thunder. For those of you new to the Stadium Blitzer, this vehicle is actually a modified Tamiya Falcon. There are a lot of differences. The front suspension is completely different. The transmission has a lot of changes. Same with the rear suspension. However, the chassis is pulled straight from the Falcon. It is a tub chassis, which is a very nice thing to have. It helps keep debris out of the car. It's easy to mount electronics. Unfortunately, the way that this chassis is designed, the front bulkhead bolts to the chassis with these two screws here, as well as a corresponding pair at the bottom. What this means is as the vehicle is driven and crashed into the ground like so, crashed into walls, even jumping and landing after time, the stress causes fractures in this area over here, and ultimately the front and the chassis simply part ways. I've seen a lot of different ways to brace this, and some of them are quite good and some are a little bit sketchy, but the fact of the matter is when you want to get your car back on the road, you got to do what you got to do. What I've devised is a brace for the top and the bottom of the car, which will secure the front suspension and redistribute the load from these two mounting points to the speed control mounting points here on the top, as well as the corresponding speed control mounts here on the bottom. These are nothing more than the backside of the screw bosses for the speed control. Let's go ahead and see how this is done. We have two braces. Now these are available independently. This is the top brace and this is the bottom brace. Although I mentioned that this car is basically a Falcon, there are considerable differences, and these are not the same ones that will work on a Falcon. These are only usable on the Stadium Blitzer, the Blitzer Beetle, and the Stadium Thunder. We'll start with the top one. To install this, you must remove these two screws here for your mechanical speed control. If you are running a mechanical speed control, you will actually have to raise it up slightly with some washers in order to accommodate this brace. Remove this shoulder screw as well as this one right here. I get comments quite often about why I'm running an MSC and an ESC, and I am not. The mechanical speed control is decorative, and I simply want them out of all of my parts drawers. We're going to push this in here like this, and what we're going to do is reuse these shoulder screws like that. We'll just thread it right back in. Always back thread first. Make sure that you push this forward, because what's going to happen is this brace is not bolted to anything here. The load from an impact pushes this bulkhead backward. So what this brace is doing is it's pushing on the bulkhead. Therefore, it's simply going to use the speed control mounts for additional bracing. Let's put the other shoulder screw in. You may need to push forward just a tad. And then we have these two speed control screws as well. Remember, you are working with ABS here, so thread them in until they stop, and you are good to go. You do not want to over torque these. So now what has happened is this brace is pushing up against this bulkhead. So in the event of an impact, the load is better distributed. This brace has secured the top. However, it has not remedied the bottom. On the bottom, what usually happens is in the event of an impact, like landing a hard jump, the top will go under compression, whereas the bottom will be under tension. So the top is being pushed in and the bottom is being pulled out. And it's that action that causes the stress here and the fractures. So for the base, we're going to prevent the tension that would normally break this thing apart. On the belly of the car, I have removed the 4 screws here, 2 of which hold the bulkhead on and the other 2 hold the servo on. We will replace it with this setup here. It is highly recommended that if you bash your Stadium Blitzer, that you replace these front screws with 14mm self-tapping M3s. You may replace these with the exact same screws that you removed, like I'm doing here, but it's very recommended that you replace them with a 14mm long self-tapping screw. The reason for this is the part that we are threading in place is 2mm thicker. This means that you will have less thread engagement. You do not need, again, to over torque this. That will cause further fatigue. Next, let's put the servo back on. We'll just thread the servo back in place. So what's happening here is the tension is being diverted and supported by these two mounts here, but that is not it. We are also going to take advantage of the two existing holes in the backside of the speed control mount that we talked about earlier. The screws required here are the 8mm long self-tapping screws. The longer ones will come into contact with the backside of the screw boss. So that may be doable if you drill that out, but you cannot drill it out with a very large bit, no larger than 2.2 to 2.4 millimeters, as you will otherwise make the hole too big. That's it. So the bottom is now significantly more secured and robust, and the same with the top. There is one side note. This was developed for the Stadium Blitzer that I happen to own. Therefore, it's critical that when you install it on your car, you do make sure that this inside face here that is pressing up against this bulkhead is in fact touching it. You don't want it pushing on it, but you want it touching it. If it does not touch, it may be necessary, although very, very unlikely, that you may need to fill that gap with a shim. The shim can be as thin as a piece of electric tape. I mean, it's going to be fractions of a millimeter. I don't foresee that happening, but again, there are variances in not only the molds, but due to the fact that your car may have more or less wear and tear on it than this one here, those could fudge the numbers a little bit. I did clear coat these before. The clear coat action seals the nylon very nicely, so if you do expose it to mud or dirt, which this thing will be exposed to, it's a lot easier to clean. The bare nylon does not like to come clean. It usually stains pretty badly, so make sure that you do give it a couple coats. And I use matte because it paints super easy, it dries really fast, and it looks awesome. I will have this thing running at the track pretty soon. I've been dying to take it out to NorCal Raceway here in San Jose, but unfortunately I simply don't have faith in the car's chassis. So I've been waiting for these parts, so please stay tuned for a nice aggressive running video of the Stadium Blitzer. The Falcon video is coming up very soon, so you will see the installation of similar parts to that car, but remember, they are incompatible with the Blitzer series and the Falcon series, so make sure that you don't think that they'll work on both cars. Please subscribe and comment away if you have any questions. It really does help me out. Please remember that all the part numbers and the bill of materials for these parts are going to be in the description. And before you take off, please check out the band Blue Pinto. They, of course, allow me to use their songs in my videos, and a link to their Facebook page is in the end credits. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.